Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to our live stream today, and we hope you are having a great start to your week. I'm Jessing from the Google Developer Relations team, and welcome to our 12th edition of Startup Coffee Chat at Google Developer Space. Startup Coffee Chat is a monthly event to bring startups from across the region to learn from one another. And for today, we are super excited to have Bima Tjahja here with us to share his knowledge on building Bukalapak. So today's topic will be on data infrastructure. And Bima has been in the data world for 10 years, building data teams across startups, financial institutions, and tech companies in both Australia and Indonesia. He's experienced in setting up and growing data platforms for various use cases, such as marketing, growth, fraud detection, and many more. And today, he'll be sharing the design process of creating a scalable data platform from the tech and people aspect to support a fast-growing company. And for today's session, thanks a lot for submitting your questions through registration. If you are viewing this on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook, feel free to also submit your questions, and we'll get to it later on after Bima has presented his keynote. Yep, and without further ado, let's invite Bima up onto the virtual stage.
Hi guys.
Hi Bima.
Hey Justin.
Yep, feel free to take it away.
All right, sounds good. Let's get started. All right, hi everyone. My name is Bima. I'm the SVP of Data at Bukalapak. Bukalapak is a Indonesian e-commerce company, or all-commerce company. We do more than just e-commerce nowadays. And I look after the data functions within Bukalapak. So today I'm going to talk about how we sort of create our data platform and how we scale it out from the technology aspects and also the people aspect. Yes, so first concept that I want to share to everyone is that you're a data-driven company only if everyone looks at data. So you cannot have a company and call it data-driven if only a team inside that company is data-driven. So that is why one of the things that we have done in Buka especially is to ensure that data is within our culture. So in Buka, we have 6 internal values. So these are company values that that we hold true to ourselves and to everyone in Buka. And one of those values is jangan baper lihat data, which in English means don't be emotional. Just be objective and just look at the data, right? So focus on the data, look at the data, and argue on the data. Don't argue based on your emotions or subjective matters, right? So this is one key aspect, is to make sure that the value of data is engraved within your company culture. So by going by those 2 points, one of the things that we aim to do is to make sure that everybody does data analytics, right? If only an analytics team does analytics, that means you are not a data-driven company. If everybody in your company, everybody from your product managers to your engineers, your customer service people, your business people, all of them look at data and can analyze data, only then you're a data-driven company. And then but as a data team, we have to provide the tools for them to do this. But typically when you democratize things become messy, right? Everybody can look at their own data, everybody can look at create their own dashboards, create their own queries. So typically you get chaos. You get the same data calculated by 2 different people with opposing values. You get different conclusions. You get a very messy BI layer. So this is one of the challenges working in a company that's data driven, where everybody looks at data, is that it can become chaotic. Just to put in perspective, at Buka, we have about 1,500 people. We have about 1,000 people every month looking at, actually executing queries, and we have about 400 people daily using our data platform. So that speaks to the potential chaos that we have. And our data team is not that big. We only have about 50 people in our data team. So this is very much what could happen. Now, one of the principles that I'd like to impose to everyone is keep it simple. Have the fastest path between your production data and the consumers of your data. Do not have long convoluted data pipelines or data systems. Don't have convoluted ETLs. Don't have a lot of dependencies within your ETLs. Make it as simple as possible. All right, this is sort of a very high level way that we view our data architecture. So before there's production systems, but as soon as it lands in the data lake, We use the CDC, we use data flow, we put it in our data warehouse. We're predominantly GCP driven, our data architecture. So we use BigQuery, we use Looker on top of that, and then we have a bunch of access layers. But the important, and we also use Data Hub for our data lineage. The important thing is, do not have lots of dependencies within our ETL layer, and do not make it complicated. Have it as simple as possible. Now, the other thing is also be pragmatic. Batch is okay. Batch, most things are okay. Do not need to be fancy and have like streaming everything. Batch is good because it's simple, pragmatic, it gets you there. Now, the second principle is accessing data should be easy. It should be riding a bike. This speaks to understanding your user base, which means the employees in your company, right? Everybody else is using data in your company. How do they like to access data? What type of person are they? Did they spend their whole life using spreadsheets? Did they spend their whole life coding? Did they spend their whole life, creating marketing content? Those speak to different data tools that you should use to access data. Now, for example, in Buka, we have half, right? Half people are coders, the other half are business people that use spreadsheet day in, day out. That is why we chose Looker as sort of our tool, because it is NoSQL. There is a NoSQL option and a SQL option to access data within Buka. Now, that you should have it so that it's very easy. Now, the reason why you want it to be easy is because this is sort of the data access framework that I'd like to put out. So people, when they look at data, it's typically either breadth analysis or depth analysis. Right? You got to make sure that your platform can satisfy both. Your platform should be able to answer quick questions at a high level, very simply, very quickly, very easily, but also then go deep and understand problems and go down to like row level data and understand that, oh, this transaction was the reason, this event was the reason why this transaction failed, or something. But sort of have sort of two layers there, and we sort of split the tools to do breadth analysis and depth analysis in Buka. We have a few tools that just gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on, right? We have a query bot, we have static graph, which I'll get into a bit more in the next slide. But static graph is sort of our metric repository. That is where most of our metrics get monitored, and it's like the sort of indexing of our key metrics is. We also have a real-time dashboard. These just give you real quick, sort of snappy data for you to understand a very simple problem. But then if you want to understand what's going on behind it, you then go to Looker, you write some SQL, you might spin up a notebook. You have tools for depth analysis, and the combination of the two will get you to a good space. Now, the third thing that is very important is build trust in your data. So data, if not done well, can mislead people, right? And it's very dangerous. And when people get misled by their data, they won't use it again. They will not have trust on your data, and then hence they won't use it. Like, you'll have very low retention within your data platform. So these are the three things that are very key in my opinion. Clear documentation, clear data dictionaries, repositories, everything. Clear governance, you should who should have access to data, what are the rules around using this data, all of that should be clear. Reproducibility also should be clear. And this is the one that it gets understated a lot. When you run a query for a certain date, on 2 given days, you should be able to get the same outcome. If you get different outcomes, there's a problem. People won't trust your data if every time they run the thing, it's different, because your data moves, right? This is very key, and it's a sort of a foundation that I think should be everywhere. Now, to do all of this, right, coming back to keep it simple, you got to centralize your definitions, right? Have one place where all of your data transformation happens. Then you can control it very easily. You can control all of the dependencies, all the transformation, all of that very easily. But if you have more than one place where your data gets transformed, it can very quickly become very messy, because then you have to think about dependencies. You have to think, and especially if it goes in loops, and then you go like, oh, this is dependent on that data set, and that data set is dependent on that data set, and then you'll just die, right? You'll get to a very messy state, and it will be very hard to get out of that state. So if you're building a platform, if you have a somewhat small-ish data platform, make sure you have a central definition for this. For us, it's mostly within Looker for business tools, and data flow, and also Apache Airflow for ETLs. That's it. Not allowed to create anything else, right? Because it then keeps it very lean. Now, oh, sorry, jump there. Now, the other part was documentation. Now, this one I call information architecture, data information architecture. Now, and this speaks to, when you go out, typically companies, when they say about a data platform, they create a data dictionary, right? They tell you, oh, okay, this table means this column in that table means that. And it kind of gives you, what's in the data, but they don't really tell you how to use the data, right? I've sort of introduced two extra layers in Buka. There is an insight dictionary and a metric dictionary. Metric dictionary was our static graph. Within the metric dictionary, we already have graphs, like either funnel-wise or time series graphs or comparison between two things. It doesn't matter, but it's a clear metric. For example, the transactions over the last 30 days is a metric. You won't necessarily get that in a data dictionary instantly, right? But in a metric, you get that. This is transaction for the last 30 days. This is the TPV or the GMV for the last 30 days. This is user signups. So it gives you extra context when you're looking at your data. Inside dictionary is level above that. This is where you go, all right, during Christmas, transactions go down because it's Christmas seasonality. The demand for our product goes down during Christmas. That's insight. That adds an extra layer to sort of your metric dictionary. Now, if you only have a data dictionary, it doesn't really help your end data users to actually use the data. And then at the end of the day, what they end up doing is they'll just keep asking to the data experts, which in this case is an analytics team or data science team. And then they won't be self-sufficient. And then you're not really democratizing data, are you? So this is what we've tried to do in Buka, to make sure that everybody has the resources they need to go in and find the data that they want, right? And find and answer the questions that they have. So going to that static dashboard, right, the metric dictionary, that is typically the starting point for Buka. So for Buka people, you go in, you open static dashboard, and then you can see, I think now we have quite a few graphs there, maybe in the maybe 1,000 around that. But we have a lot of that. We have a lot of data there. That's where you start, right? I look at transactions over the last 30 days. I click on it. It'll take me to the depth analysis tool, which in this case will be Looker, and I can go deeper. I can go, all right, I want to break this down by payment method, or all right, I want to break it down by user lifecycle. All of that is how sort of you start using data within Buka. Now, the traditional way in most companies, and I've experienced this, I have 10 years I've been in the data world for 10 years, so I've experienced this as well. It's typically you would have like bookmarks on your browser or notepad, and you have like a list of, you have a list of dashboards that you use, right? That people tell you over time. And people have their own individual list, right? And that's okay. But at the same time, that's very dangerous because those dashboards could be very old and not maintained, right? Those queries could be out of date, and the data, upstream data has changed. Now with this, you sort of want to centralize that action of creating a list. You already have a list of dashboards and graphs somewhere centralized within the company. So then you can just simply use it, right? So that's how we try to encourage. Now the last, sorry, not the last, but one of the other ones is number 4 is data literacy, and this applies to everyone in the company, not just the data team again. You want to have a good balance between, you have to train people in the company to know how to use the tools, right? To have access to the data. So, you have you know how to write SQL. B, you actually have a SQL tool that you use to run the queries, right? Maybe a BI tool or whatever. Third is they have to know how to use that data after they write the query, right? They have to know how to structure data and create insights out of data, right? These are the 3 things that we in Buka, we share. We do a lot of knowledge sharing internally. We make sure that we equip the product managers, the business people, to make sure that they know these concepts and they can use the data. Again, if they don't know and you do not equip them, all they do is they'll ask people who know, and then they'll become lazy. And then again, you're not democratizing data again. You're just creating a centralized, data service team, which is not really what you want. You want everybody to be self-sufficient, being able to look at data, use data, access data by themselves. So, the expectation is everybody in the company should do, like we've all seen this, right? We've all kind of we all know this descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive stuff, right? And I've recently changed this to include the predictive stuff. It used to only be descriptive and diagnostic. But you start from the bottom, obviously. But everybody in the company should know how to do this. You should create an ecosystem, both tool and technology wise, process wise, governance, and knowledge base to do all of this. Not by the data team, but by the business team, the product team, the engineering team, everybody in the company. This is what you kind of want to aspire to do, right? And sort of one myth that I sort of want to make sure I put out there, that if you're looking at data, you don't really know what to do, go deeper into it, because this is not how data works, right? Again, the concepts that I have shared are to get to obviously we all mostly work in corporate. We work for a goal. There could be a good goal behind what you do, but then at the end of the day, your bottom line still has to make sense. So at the end of the day, you use the concepts that I've sort of explained. We've used the concept that I've seen to get the best out of our data, but it's not magic. It takes a lot of hard work, organization, and and you need a lot of discipline to be able to create value from your data. A lot of the times people get mistaken that data is just a good idea, or AI or ML or any sort of data related concept. It's a great idea, but they don't really know what's going on. And that's very dangerous. You have to know what's going on. You have to know what's in your data. You have to know how to leverage your data. Only then can you take the benefit out of your data. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, speed and accuracy is the name of the game. That's what we want to aspire to. That's where we're headed. So you have to create a platform that you can trust, that is high performant, that can create quick insights quickly and can create benefit quickly. But yeah, that's sort of how we've been doing it in Buka.
Thanks a lot, Bima. And yeah, we hope that presentation, I think I learned a lot from it as well. I personally relate to the part about bookmarking a lot of different dashboards. And after a while, like every year, you just update it because there's always a new dashboard for each year. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. I think we can all learn something and implement that into our own organizations. Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave your comments in the live chat and we'll get to them. And I think we have a question from Eric. He asked, do you use any CDP in Buka?
So we don't necessarily use one central CDP, because we've realized that if you use one central CDP, it won't answer everything, and you're trying to over sort of centralize things. So what we end up doing is our data warehouse is somewhat our CDP, in that you can create sort of like customer 360 tables, right? This customer is about to churn, or propensity stuff within our data warehouse. And then we just push that out into a serving layer. And that's how typically we do sort of customer level, product level, seller level, insights, or not insights really, but the propensity stuff, right? Or like the user last login stuff. All of that is created in our data warehouse and then pushed out to a serving layer, and then we do it that way. So we don't use the streaming CDP. This is the way we do it, is a lot more flexible, but it also lags a little bit. So really, depending on the use case, sometimes you don't want to use this way if it is really time sensitive. If it's not time sensitive, I think the batch way warehouse push up to the production layer is the
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And another comment just came in. So Ahmad asked, do you use Google Data Catalog for data governance?
No, we use Data Hub. So Data Hub is the LinkedIn one. So we use that for our data catalog. The reason why the reason why, because it also does data lineage very well. Now, the reason why you want to do data lineage very well is because you want to be able to go from like, oh, this graph, where did I get the data from? You go in and it goes like, okay, these 5 tables. Okay, these 5 tables in the data warehouse got their data from these 6 tables in the data lake, and then these 6 tables in the data lake got it from these tables in production. Having it centralized is a lot better. What you should not do is have a catalog for every layer or multiple catalogs in a company. No one will use it. Getting people to use one catalog is already hard enough. You create 3, no one is going to use it.
Okay, yeah, Ahmad, we hope that answered your question. I think meanwhile we are going to go through some questions we got from registration. So a lot of people are asking about challenges that you faced. So I think earlier on you also spoke about how every team needs to be data driven in order for it to be called a data driven organization. So what are some of the biggest challenges of getting a startup or company to become a data driven organization? And how does one develop the culture and required processes over time? I think, the story of how you transformed Buka's culture is really interesting. Yeah, maybe you can share a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think number one, get the right tools, obviously, but the right tool is you have to understand the people. You can't just go like, this is the right tool if the people that are going to be using the tool don't think that that's the right tool. So one thing that I would tend to do every time, you're sort of starting up a data platform in a company or in a startup, you have to understand who are the founders of that startup, right? If you're the founder, you have to understand how you use data and what are the people you're going to hire. Mm-hmm. Then you build your data platform on that. Because at the end of the day, if you create a very, say, code-centric data platform and everybody is ex-consulting, you're going to fail. Vice versa, if you create a very, non-SQL data platform, based data platform, and everybody is like ex-engineer, you're also going to fail. So you have to understand, who's the leader, who's going to do most of the hiring. That's who you have to cater to, and that's something that you got to do early on, because if not, you'll fail, and they won't use your data platform, and then they'll just complain, and then they'll ask you for you to get the data out, and you'll complain.
Okay, and I think I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, but Chuck asked, how do you deal with changes in time series data requirements? Do you update old warehouse or create a new one?
A pen. So, okay. This is around data model. So data lakes, always a pen, right? So we use the CDC. So it captures all of the changes within production. And we have a data lake that does like a pen. Now, on the data warehouse side, you can do a few things, right? You can just show the latest state. You can show all of the states. But typically, what you want to do is both. You wanna have both tables available, so you know what the different states of changes are, and that goes back to building trust in your data, because states that change, it becomes very tricky. When you have fixed states, it becomes very clear and reproducible. You know what state changed when to produce what type of data. So I don't know if that answered the question. How do you deal with the changing time series data requirements? Do you update old warehouse or create new one? But in terms of like time changes of data, that's what we tend to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you need any clarification, feel free to leave another comment. We'll get to it later on. Yeah, and I'm curious about, so going back to the previous question, right? I'm curious about how you handle sort of pushback from the other teams when maybe if they are used to going to the data team to get certain metrics, certain insights, and now that you say, okay, to be a data-driven organization, every team needs to go in and look for certain things themselves. How do you handle pushback, or if there was any from your experience?
All right, this is the data team hiring strategy. So if you're building up a data team, first you hire a data engineer. Don't hire a data analyst. Okay, or hire one, but don't hire too many. Hire a data engineer. Create demand for analytics need, but don't have enough supply of people doing analytics.
Okay.
You are only lazy if someone does the work for you. It's like when you live at home and your mom does your laundry, right? You don't get to do laundry at home. But as soon as you live by yourself, no one's doing your laundry, you do your laundry.
Mm,
So same concept stands. If you already have someone to create queries and get data out for you and do the analysis for you, you're just gonna ask, what?
mm,
Why are you gonna do it yourself? But if there's nobody, and then I swim or sink, like okay, I'll swim. I'll go access data and I'll find insights. So
mm,
yeah, I think in terms of hiring strategy, hire more people to create the platform itself
mm,
than doing the analysis, because then you create you create scarcity in analytics people, so
mhm.
people will just do it themselves.
Okay. Yeah, we hope if you are hiring your data team, we hope you caught that one. That's really good advice. And another question from Xiong. What if you already have a sizable team of analysts? I think you also shared this in our chat previously. That would be a really interesting story.
Yeah. So I was inherited a large analytics team because I think the old way of thinking is always build an analytics team, right? That's like old school thinking. So the way that you manage that is you kind of give them um, intervention almost, but no, you kind of give them a new home, right? And when I say that, I don't mean kick them out of the company because they're still analytics people. They're still very valuable people,
Mm,
but give them to the product more, so the product or the business team more than the data team. So in Buka, we have some roles called business analyst, right? But they stick to the business team. They're not part of like the data ecosystem thing. What they do is they analyze data, but they're not always technically advanced. They mostly use Looker, in our case Looker, maybe write a few queries, but then after that go to spreadsheets, create presentations, justify why we need to do something, right? Or kill something or create something, or whatever. So if you already have a sizable one, you either move them to building up your data platform, because you need a lot of good people to actually build a good data model. So one thing that people also always get wrong is the people that also built the data warehouse, the data structure, are people who don't use the data. Now, when that happens, you build it to optimize things that don't matter. You build it to optimize things like query time. It it matters, but it doesn't really matter for the end guy that's using that insight to make a business decision,
mm,
right? And the way that they think could be that I want to access this type of data more than that type of data, and then you build your data model on top of that. So um, and then obviously you have to know your technology, and some technologies are better at certain data models than other technologies. But know your technology, but you also have to know your business. So for our case, a lot of those analyst people end up becoming what we call BI engineers. And what they do is they create the data model. They actually go in and talk to businesses like, oh, what sort of questions do you normally have? And I was like, oh, we're very curious on like customer lifecycle stuff. All right, okay. Why are you curious of customer lifecycle stuff? Because we have a acquisition problem, for example. We typically have more acquisition issues. We don't have retention issues. Okay, all right. So show me a type of like dashboard that you look at. Oh, I always break things down by customer. So then you need to be able to join your fact transaction table to a dim customer table that has all of the attributes that that guy kind of needs.
mm,
That is a fit for purpose um, data structure. It's not about what the production tables look like and then you create something that fits on that. It's what about like the end user, what they actually want to see. So
mm,
yeah, I would convert them into two parts. Like I would go like, you either go to the business and then work with them. There's going to be some presentation creating, a lot of talking to understanding problems, customer research, all of that. or you go create the data platform. Obviously, this is different from like data scientists, which are more, ML and AI based. But this is more for people who their full-time job is analytics. You also still need to keep a few because there are some advanced analytics that not everybody can do. I mean, I don't expect the business person to do like process mining stuff, right? When you're trying to look at the funnel of this user, how many times do they go back, and how many times do they go forward, how many repeats, what's the inefficiencies, all of that. I think an advanced data analyst should still do that. But you should have more demand than supply in terms of analytics people to the need of analytic services. Then you'll get them to do it themselves.
Yeah, so we hope that answered your question. And I think another common question that came in through registration is how do you build a robust data infrastructure and things like how do you know if the infrastructure you currently have is good?
Okay, to build a robust one, depending on which stage your company is, but I typically would say stick to one ecosystem. So we are past the time where everybody builds their own data platform on their on-premise, bare metal, right? We have passed that Hadoop Hive cycle. If you're still doing that, good on you. I salute you. I could never do it. There's just so much optimization that it will blow my head off. So I typically will ask, I love, data products as a service. And there are quite a few ecosystems out there. There's obviously the Google ecosystem with BigQuery and the family. There's the Snowflake ecosystem. You can use that. There's the Amazon ecosystem with Redshift. Stick with one. Don't if you're a late stage big company, it's okay to mix because you know what's going on. You're hyper optimizing on certain things. But if you're starting off, stick with one. Pick one based on your end customer and how they think. Pick one and stick with it. Optimize that ecosystem. That's how I feel like you'll start off better building a robust ecosystem. Don't try to reinvent the wheel for a lot of this stuff. We already have great tech teams, tech companies that build great data warehousing and data management solutions. Just stick with them. They can do Azure with Synapse and all that. Even that's okay. Just stick with one. Don't go like, oh, I want to use Synapse, but then after that I want to use like I want to use BigQuery, but then Power BI in front. Yeah, they won't talk nicely to each other. Just stick with one. Now, how do you measure a good data platform or not? As we would measure any good product out there, I like to see the customer side of things, which is my users. I want to see their retention. I want to see their utility rate. How many times do they use my the data platform, the DAU, the MAU? How many times a month do they use it? Do they keep using it every day? And customer feedback and all that. You have to get the ground stuff right. You have to make sure that, again, like governance is there, reproducibility is there. That's there. But then, at the end of the day, if the end user of your data platform is complaining, like the business analyst or the product manager, you don't really have a good data infrastructure, do you? They will not complain. They're product managers. They always complain. But there's different degrees of complaining. Right?
Okay.
There's like, I will never use this. It's the worst thing ever. Or like, Bima, why is this so slow? Now, Bima, why is this so slow? I can deal with. Like, Bima, I cannot use this. Go to hell, die for me, please. That then means your data platform is bad.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Like, yeah, I think it's pretty true. Like, you always track all these metrics when it's outward facing, but I mean, why not apply it for the internal use as well? Yeah, and a bit more about the kind of technology that you use. So, yeah, what are some tools that you use for ETL processes, best practices?
Yeah, I think with this, it goes back to choose the one data ecosystem if you're starting off. If you're not starting off, I feel like, okay, going back, if you're not starting off, who is bidding your data platform? You have to understand, are they SQL guys, no SQL guys? DBT is also always good. I feel like, that's something that's like SQL based that everybody can understand. But if you use DBT, Just use DBT. Just use one. Don't mix like 50 ETL structures, like have lots of pre-processing and all of that. You'll die inside. Trust me. When somebody asks you about the data lineage, and ask you, how do I get to this conclusion? Where's this data coming from? And then, you'll just die, right? Because you don't know where it's actually coming from. So if you're using one, just stick to one. Very high level, I recommend DBT a lot. We're not using it 100% in Buka yet, but it is a very easy to use SQL-based tool for data ETL and transformation processes. You just then need a scheduler on top of it, so that's pretty good. But for me, best practice, use one. Pick one and use it. You are the sun, that's it, no one else.
Okay. Another question came in. I think this is relating to the question before this. So how do you evaluate your data infrastructure? Is it based on use case or resource or company?
Yep. So number one that I've been challenged a lot actually recently is about cost. So one is you want to have a data platform that's good, that's reliable, that's everything. Just be wary about cost. People tend to miss this, tend to think that, because this is like, new age investment, that they don't think about cost, but think about costs. Think about what benefits are you going to get for your buck, right? With this data platform, how much can I create? Now, in terms of evaluating based on case or resource or company, we do it based on product in Buka. So Buka has a lot of product verticals. Each product will then have like the product cost, because back to the bottom line, right? The product needs to be able to make money. Now that product will spend X amount in data, and we do that by knowing where their production database is. We see that into our data lake, so we know that this part of the data lake is for this table, which is this product. And then we know that, okay, even though it gets transformed into data warehouse, we sort of average it out then by the users of the data warehouse. Like, if you use data warehouse, because it's data warehouses are mostly compute based in terms of cost, like their biggest cost, like it's storage and compute, right? So storage is based on the table, compute is based on the user for the data product, for the product, and then that's how we kind of allocate. And then if you're a product and you use data services within Buka, and you make a lot of money, use more data services. You don't make any money, figure it out how you're going to make money. That's sort of the mentality.
Yeah, I think cost is always like top of mind, especially for startups. And I know, like, you mentioned a lot about choosing one ecosystem and then sticking with it. So there's a question about if you are a medium-sized company, what are some tools you recommend to build the most cost-efficient data infrastructure?
I'm in a Google event, so
Google is the right answer. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And I use GCP too, so I don't know.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I say use Google. I mean, I've done a lot of build the most cost efficient data infrastructure for a medium-sized company. Now, what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't spin up slave databases and query them, because that could actually be more expensive. That's number one. Number two is, I'm biased here. I think Google is pretty cost efficient. They have a free tier as well for smaller companies, so check that out. I'm speaking like a salesperson here.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear we did not ask Bima to say this. He's saying it out of his own accord.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it, cringing at the same time. But yeah, I feel like they have a free. Amazon also has a free tier for Redshift, but yeah, it's not the easiest. Amazon is like, if it's very complex, if you optimize it right, it will perform like hell. But GCP is more simpler. It's like more tame. So if you're a medium company, use something that's easier to manage. And I would say Google. The other one is Snowflake, but Snowflake can be a bit pricey.
Okay, yeah, we hope that answered the question. And another question came in from Jeffrey. So he asked, do you normally hire software engineer in data team to help build the data infrastructure or platform, or data engineer is the one who should do it? What's your thought in that? Yeah.
You
Oh,
build the
and
data
Shang
infrastructure
said
project?
+1 to Jerry's question.
Yeah,
Okay.
they normally hire software engineers in the data team to build the data infrastructure, or data engineer, or data engineer, the one who should do it. Okay, now, in a perfect world, this is my, so there's this concept called data mesh, right? In a perfect world, and especially if your company has multiple products, your data engineer, your data squad, your product squad should be able to push the data all the way to the data warehouse in a perfect world. The reason why you want that is because these are the guys that built the product. They know what should you monitor in the product, right? Arguably, right? They know what's going on in the back. They know the movement of the data. They know how much variance is going to be on the data, how much volume is going to create, and all of that. So if if you're starting a new product, or if you're still quite young as a company, look up data mesh. Now, that concept is that where every team or business or product is self-sufficient in building their end-to-end data needs. So they go all the way from producing data all the way to the BI layer. It's all done um, by the product squad, like the product team, not by a centralized data engineering platform. So what I've been talking about so far is decentralizing the usage of data, but this concept speaks to decentralizing the creation of the data pipeline. Now, the use of data, if it's messy, yes, it's dangerous because you can make the wrong decision. But at the end of the day, it's still the top layer. It's still more okay to make a mistake in creating a chart than it is to create a data pipeline. The problem is that creating the wrong data pipeline, you won't know what's wrong. Now, that's very dangerous. So in that progression, decentralize the analytics first, like the usage of data, and then you actually want to decentralize the piping of data. In an ideal world, you want the data teams to almost be incorporated within like the squads, the product squads. So in terms of should you hire software engineers or data engineers, I mean, pragmatically, you should just do both because they're different skill sets. You probably want a data engineer to do your data pipelining. Obviously, full stack is always great if you also know backend engineering and stuff like that, but they're a rare breed. But ideally, in an ideal world, if you want like to challenge the status quo of how to operate a company, especially on the engineering technical side and data side, you get the product squad to build in the PRD and to get the engineers to build it, the whole requirement up to the data warehouse, all of it. So there is no centralized team that creates that. The centralized team will only do governance. Will only say you can do this, 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 and this, but you do it. We're not going to do it.
Okay. Yeah, and Shang asked, following on that, for startups, what type of skill sets should they come with, either data engineers or software engineers?
Right. Okay. So number one, I think they have to know SQL, but besides SQL, I think they should know queuing mechanism like Kafka's or PubSubs, like things like that. That's used a lot. They have to know relational databases at least and the differences of them. Like they should know what the difference of like a MongoDB and a MySQL at least if you want to get a software engineer to do data engineering as well. They have to be able to visualize in their head how data moves within a company. Like they have to know that, oh, you got a production database that gets produced data from your production system, and then you got a way from getting this data over to your data lake if you have a data lake, and they gotta know this gets transformed over to a data warehouse and how that transformation happens. They need to be able to visualize that at least. But in terms of technology, yeah, most software engineers actually know databases. Like that's the stance, right? Most software engineers actually know databases. The thing that they miss is that they're used to optimizing the database for the production use. Optimizing a database for someone to hit it and ask, what's the transactions for the last 30 days? And for it to go and ask, user 0054, what's the date of birth? Like that's two different database, concepts behind their head, right? If you're interviewing for someone, a data engineer, one question that I like to ask is, that metric, like pick a metric, any metric, like transaction last 30 days. How does data flow from being created all the way to creating a graph that says the transaction for the last 30 days? Get them to explain that. Get them to explain, like, okay, you have database in production, goes to a data warehouse, there's an ETL, could be batch, could be streamed, and then you can poke them in, like, oh, okay, how you get the data out from the database? Are you going to use batch? Why do you use batch versus CDCs or bin logging, tailing bin logs or whatever? And then that's sort of the life cycle that a DEng software engineer / DEng, in my opinion, needs to be able to have that decentralized building of a data platform.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Shang. We hope that answered the questions. And I just realized we have run out of time, but it was really great to have Bima sharing your insights. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for sharing your questions. And I think to just end off, thank you again, Bima. And I think if any of you have any more questions, feel free to connect with him via LinkedIn. And we would also love to have your feedback on this session. Let us know what you think and how we can improve, what you want to hear next in our Startup Coffee Chat. And till then, we'll see you next month. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Bye.